Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to the full card breakdown. This time for UFC 309. We are here for a massive pay-per-view in Madison Square Garden, headlined by, of course, Jon Bone Jones making his return against Stipe Miocic in what is a interesting heavyweight title bout. Not only that, but we have ourselves the rematch between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler, some Bo Nickal on the card. We have ourselves Marcelo Ruffy, a big name coming up here too. Should be a very fun card. 13 fights to talk about. And you know what? We may want to see Aspinall in there. It might want to be Aspinall versus Jones, but we are going to have a great card regardless. We are given the cards we are dealt, and I do think it's still going to be a phenomenal fight. We still get to see Jon Jones in there, see how Stipe is able to treat him, and see if he still has any greatness left in him. And we do still have ourselves 13 fights on tap from General, a card that I am excited to break down for both a betting and a DraftKings perspective. So be sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel. As always, check out Establish the Run for further in-depth DraftKings run breakdowns, where I do a podcast over there with Brett Appley, as well as check out Coolbet using the description down below using code Gordo over there. Without further ado, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive in. Get the fight night started with the 9-4-1 Veronica Hardy versus the 10-1 Eduardo Moura. Moura making her jump up to 125 after missing weight a couple times at 115. And she is someone who I have viewed pretty highly. She fights the same camp as Jailton Almeida, and she kind of follows that same style. She's super aggressive. She wants to get those takedowns, and she is pretty dominant from top position. If she isn't able to get that, though, we saw last time that her cardio is not always there. She still is a pretty slow striker on the feet, but has shown good durability and good ability to push through and always like to get those takedowns. She's not going to really give up on them. She will go forward and shoot takedowns. And when she is on top, she's a very dangerous fighter. She faced someone in Veronica Hardy who has made incredible improvements since becoming Veronica Hardy. Before the marriage, the wonderful marriage that gave her these powers, she was losing. She was being destroyed on the ground. She wasn't as slow. She's a little inactive in the UFC as well. But since she's on a quiet little run here, being 3-0, she has had some really good wins as well. And she's really improved that game. She's had great scrambles down there, really showing off her striking with some good quick hands, good ability to mix it up to the body as well. And has shown good footwork to go out there and win rounds, win minutes, win optics. And that has looked really good for her. Despite that, here she is going to get a very big task. And you know what it always comes down to is, yes, she's able to go out there and beat Aldridge, Horth, Miller, but is anyone really going to bring that style that someone like Moura does? Last time we saw her really go out there against a wrestler, albeit Julian Robertson, one of the literal most submission wins at the weight class. She did get submitted, but still someone who can be taken down, can be controlled down there, can be out physical. And I think this move up to the weight class may help someone like Moura, who maybe isn't going to be as tired as later rounds. All this to say is I think this line might be a little wide, and I'm actually going to pick the underdog here in Eduardo Moura. You know me, I love my grapplers. I love these people who are going to go out there and shoot takedowns early, and she's my pick to win. However, I'm not saying she's over here being a lock, super goat, max whale, hammer play. She is still someone who, if this fight gets extended, I favor Hardy in the striking. I do think Hardy's going to have the better ability to go out there and land shots as the fight goes on. But however, I do think Moura is going to be able to get takedowns early. I think she can establish top control, and I think she can really land some devastating ground and pound with opposition. And I think more times than not only can Moura win that first round, she also has the ability to get her out of there, land a ton of damage, and as long as she's fresh, I do favor Moura. Now, if you think Hardy wins, maybe sprinkle around 3, maybe live bet her if the fight goes on. But I do think Moura has the ability to win round 1, mix in takedowns round 2 and 3, and potentially win this fight more than the line entails. So give me Eduardo Moura. I do think the line is a bit wide there. DraftKings-wise, easiest fight to break down for me on DraftKings. Veronica Hardy has never been a good DraftKings scorer. Her most points she scored, 95. I don't think she's submitting more. So 91 against Miller there. Aside from that, her last two performances, 58, 51. I do not see her as a good DraftKings score. So 8.7K, she is nothing but a contrarian play. And even at that, won't be getting into too much. She's not going to land takedowns. Don't see too much finish upside. She is reliant on some volume on the feet. Flip side of things, though, Moura, one of my favorite plays. 7.5K. We're starting off early, but her one win scored 127. She is super aggressive. Her path to victory is reliant on grappling and takedowns and ground and pound. And she is someone who I do think's able to score very well, has a very, very high ceiling, and at 7.5K is an underdog I'll definitely be looking to target. I don't think she's able to win this fight without constant ground success. This could come with multiple takedowns, could come with potential finish early on. She's not a lock to win. However, out of all the underdogs in this range, I do think she has a great chance to win, and I think she has a very good ceiling with that. So give me Eduardo Moura on DraftKings. Give me her to win, but a truly close fight, because I do think Hardy's able to pick it up as the fight goes on. I think that damage early is going to be too much, so give me Eduardo Moura. Next fight up, we have the 11-2 Oban Elliott versus 9-4-1 Basil Hafez, and another very interesting one. I'm surprised at the bout order, because it makes me sound a bit different. Last week we went out there and we picked all favorites, and we played chalk, so I can't even gloat about it, but we did do pretty well on our predictions. And spoiler alert, we're going to start off this card with 2 underdogs, and I'm going to take Basil Hafez 9-4-1. Now let's preface this by saying, I'm not the biggest Oban Elliott guy. I lost money in Kai Brito, I lost money in Preston Parsons. I'm putting that behind me, and I'm not trying to get it all back here. I just think people are putting too much stock into his past victories. The guy has great heart. He's got really good cardio out there as well, most of the time, and a very good ability to scramble. But aside from that, he's still pretty slow on the feet. He does have good volume, but I think he's technically a bit behind in a lot of these positions, and I do think he can be put on his back at a lot of times here. I don't think he's the best necessarily jiu-jitsu person, but he's got good scrambles, he's got good athleticism, and good coaching that makes him kind of get up really quick. He is game planned very well, let's put it that way. Brazil Hafez, the reason I think this line is so wide is because he's coming off a bad performance last time. He was a very big favorite against Mickey Gall, kind of just wanted to go in there, have fun, was able to win the fight, but did not look the minus 400 favorite he was listed out to be, did not grapple as much as he did in the JDM fight, was rocked multiple times, honestly, just did not look great. However, I still think this guy is a decent fighter. He's a dog, extremely durable, has a very good ground game, and has the ability to compete in the feet as well. I think he lacks a little bit of volume, and his cardio has thrown off in the past, which is kind of why people are picking Elliott this week. People favor the cardio of Elliott, and I completely get that. However, at this price tag, when at the time of filming, Oban Elliott's a minus 275 favorite, I have to have my issues about that one. I mean, he was barely that price tag against Val Woodburn, and now you have someone here in Brazil Hafez who can not only compete in the striking, who throws very heavy against someone like Elliott who can be hurt, but someone who's also a very good grappler, can, I think, have the wrestling advantage, shall I go down there, and just can compete. I think if this was minus 110, you could sell me on Oban Elliott having more volume, having more pace down the stretch, and potentially winning minutes, but I think Hafez has more finishing upside. I think he is the much better fighter when fresh, more power, more optics in the feet, has the ability to mix in takedowns as well. And I think he has this more well-rounded skill set. Whereas, yes, Oban Elliott can go out there and excel past him on volume and minute-winning opportunities, but I don't think he has the opportunity to go out there and finish Hafez. And if you're going to be an almost minus 300 favorite at this point in time, you need to go out there and meet up the price tag. And I don't think he can do that. I think his win condition is more so a close decision where maybe he's dropping that first round. So give me Brazil Hafez. I'm willing to take a shot on the big underdog this week. And because of that, a solid play for me on DraftKings as well. I just mentioned Moura. Hafez is a bit different because he doesn't necessarily have that same necessity to grapple. I mean, he can go out there and strike as well, but he does have finishing opportunities. I do think he can hurt Oban Elliott. I do think he wins less often than Moura, so maybe I do prefer Moura on a one-to-one basis, but I do think Hafez has grappling upside. I think he's got finishing upside. I think he can go out there and compete in the feet as well. And although Oban Elliott can win this fight with volume, I do think Hafez is definitely in it for as long as he's got some gas in the tank. So give me Brazil Hafez. It was a very close fight. One of the ones where the line's a bit off to me. I will probably end up losing more money against Oban Elliott. The guy's good, but I don't think he's good enough to live off this price tag against someone at Brazil Hafez who is as well-rounded as he is. Next up, we got the 7-6 Mickey Gall versus the 10-5 Brahimaj, and this is one of my least confident picks the entire card. These are two fighters who necessarily aren't the greatest, maybe not pay-per-view worthy, but fighters who can go out there and put on entertaining scraps. Mickey Gall, we just talked about him. He just lost to Brazil Hafez last time. He made a great account of himself considering the price tag, but still was able to be dropped, be able to be hurt, and still ended up losing that fight at the end. Brahimaj has also alternated wins and losses inside the UFC here, most notably coming off a loss last time to Themba Gorimbo, but this guy hasn't looked great too often. He does have a pretty good camp around him, and he is a phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioner, but he lacks the cardio, he lacks the striking, and truthfully, every fight that makes it out of the first round, the guy loses. He is literally round one submission or bust, and because of that, it costs him a lot of times here in the UFC. Mickey Gall is definitely more of a vet. He's only 1-4 in his last 5, but I mean, he's facing Mike Perry. He's taken on Mike Malott. He's taken on Moura, Hafez. He's fought a decent level of competition, but the guy just doesn't really excel at many things. He's got a solid submission game, shall I go there. He can compete in the feet. He does have decent ability to go out there and take a couple shots, but he does not absorb damage that well. Not the most volume. His cardio is pretty decent, but the guy just doesn't really always put it together too well. And these people who are specialists in their fields, whether it be the power of Mike Malott, who was able to knock him out there, or people who are able to go out there and out volume over time, he's just not necessarily that good at one aspect of the sport. Let's put it that way. Put it in a kind of rude, but not the most volume. He does have his flaws. The reason this fight's so hard for me, though, is I do think at their freshest in the first minute of the fight, Brahimaj is the better fighter. And I do think he has the opportunity to go out there and beat Mickey Gall. I do think he has the ground game to go out there and succeed. It's just, it really falls off a cliff. I favor Gall's heart more, and I favor potentially Gall's striking too, which you never really say in a Mickey Gall fight. And all these things are say, although Brahimaj has the opportunity to go out there, land takedowns, and submit Gall, because Brahimaj is truthfully a very good grappler, I'm going to pick Mickey Gall here. I actually picked Brahimaj earlier in the week, but the more I did my research, the more I did it. It's just, I can't trust Brahimaj at this point of career. Mickey Gall does not excel at many things, but I do think he has more heart, more cardio, and more ability to go out there and proceed to land this damage over the fact, have the volume he does, and win optics. Because I do think out of this first round, Brahimaj kind of quits out there. So Give me Gall in a really close one. I would not be opposed if you took me Brahimaj early on in terms of like sub 1 props, but not a fight I really want to get too invested in. DraftKings wise, I kind of favor Brahimaj if anything, because like I said, path to victory is around one submission, 104.98 when he did do that, but I'm not forcing him to my lineups. I prefer other underdogs, as I mentioned. And Gall, I don't think really has a style to go out there and score too well either. Has scored 106 before in a first round sub, but I think his path to victory is going to come second, third, maybe decision if he's going to win. And I don't think he's the takedown upside volume to really go out there and do that. So give me Gall to win in a very close one, but not a fight I want too much involvement in. Then we have the 25-9 Marcin Tybura versus the 8-0 Jonata Diniz. Diniz was just supposed to fight Derek Lewis a couple weeks ago, and now he's here. Diniz is a guy who I just broke down. I'm not the highest on the guy, we'll put it that way. He's a phenomenal counter striker, does have a very good kickboxing history, solid power in those hands as well, but defensively he's not the best. He keeps head on the center line, can absorb damage, but the ground game's a real issue. All these kickboxers, you're going to have to worry about them. He seems to have great heart and ability to fight through these positions, but he can be taken down, he can be stuck on his back, and although he's had a lot of success on the feet, we have really yet to see him tested against a solid grappler, and that's kind of what Marcin Tybura is. Tybura is that wet blanket. He wants to take you down, he wants to hold you there. He doesn't necessarily have that same submission game or ground and pound game as many others in this division, but he can still land a ton of ground and pound from top position. He can take you down, he can hold you there, and although I think he can strike, that is kind of his biggest weakness because his chin has been an issue for him in the past. What this comes down to, though, is Marcin Tybura is a vet. He's been around forever. He's fought a ton of killers, a ton of guys who have a ton of power, just like Jonata Diniz, and he has realized success taking people down and beating them there. I mean, going out there and just decimating Tai Tuivasa, submitting him in the first round is a game plan that you are going to have to bring against a lot of these high-level strikers. And although Jonata Diniz is someone who is a high-level striker, it's someone who I do think can clip Tybura if all things came down to it, I don't necessarily think he has the opportunity to do that more than the line entails, right? Like, yes, Diniz can go out there with that knockout shot, but at what percentage does that happen? I think more times than not, Tybura lands a takedown, he's able to get on top position, land ground and pound, and look to get this guy out of here. I think I favor him a lot in the wrestling exchanges. We have yet to see really Diniz tested in there, and although Diniz has been able to survive some wrestling exchanges and get the knockouts later, I rate Marcin Tybura way higher than an Austin Lane, way higher than a Carl Williams, who didn't even attempt takedowns there, but a guy who has been around forever, has the veteran knowledge to know to go out there and want to take him down and win the fight that way. So I think Tybura's path to victory and style plays out better here. I think he's got the way better grappling path to victory, and he's not going to want to strike against someone as dangerous as Jonata Diniz. So the takedowns are there. I do think Tybura gets them and is able to win this fight here. DraftKings wise, you all know me. I'm on my grapplers more often than not, but I do want to make a case for both sides here. Tybura, 8.2K, scored 120 in his last win, so definitely a guy you want to have in there for some wrestling upside. I will be playing some of him, but although I'm picking against Diniz, let's have some of him, right? He's got 2 wins. They didn't score the best, but now he's got a guy in front of him who I think if you're going to want to beat Tybura, it's early knockout. Aspinall's able to do that. People have been able to rock him, and I do think Jonata Diniz's path to victory could score a lot better than his previous opponent, so I will still sprinkle some Diniz in at 8K. I'm not completely Xing out of my player pool, but I am picking Marcin Tybura to get this one done. Then we have the short notice replacement, 8-3-1 Roberto Romero versus the 12-2 David Onama. David Onama now a big favorite, and I'll be honest, it's the fight I've looked into the stylistic proponents of this one, maybe the least. I've only seen a couple fights for Romero, and the guy looks fun. Like, he'll go forward with reckless abandon. He will look to put on entertaining fights, but he's still someone who I think is very raw in his process. He's still someone who leaves a lot of openings to be hit. I do think his ground game can allow him for him to be taken down as well. But again, I'll keep coming back to it. The guy is able to put on fun fights. He is able to go forward and has historically been able to take some shots and scramble pretty well, leading him to only be finished once, but against a lower level competition as well. Onama, we've seen him before. He is the known commodity here. He is very battle tested, never been finished. The guy is extremely dangerous out of the cage, and he has kind of had a style built on damage. There are fights where it's been back and forth. That Landwehr fight was incredible, but he's able to go out there, land powerful shots. He's got great hands in doing so, and has a decent submission game at it as well, where he was able to go out there and submit Garrett Ironfield, a win that has aged pretty recently as well. So I think Onama's a fine fighter here, and I expected Onama to be a big favorite. I didn't know if it would be to the 4 digits point of things, but I do have to favor Onama here. He's able to go out there and I think blend in the aggression that Romero has, which is a bit more technicality, be the better counter striker, and Onama has shown great durability, great cardio down the pass as well. Maybe not great, but against a much better level of competition that way. You add in the size advantage, the level of experience, and I do think Onama has the ability to go out there, land the bigger shots, win the moments, and even potentially threaten things on the ground as well. Romero can go out there, mix it up, can push forward, but I do think he will be hit too much, and being hit as much by a guy like Onama is never a good recipe. I think Onama can win the minutes, but I do think it's going to be one of the most exciting fights in the card. Romero brings a phenomenal style to the cage, a very entertaining one, and one that I do think will leave the fans happy. Let's put it that way. So give me Onama to win. The line's a bit interesting to me. I'll see interested in how it plays out on DraftKings as well. I think Romero's tough. I think he's a fun fighter. I think he's definitely maybe let's say, jumping into the deep end here and potentially causing him issues, but I think he can compete. I think he can get some wins at a UFC level. I just don't think he's like amazing anywhere, so he's not going to really blow you out of the water. If Onama's going to come in here at 9.7 and be a big favorite like the line entails, I don't know if I'll get to him that much. There are other plays I like. However, I will sprinkle some of him in just because we haven't seen Romero at this level. Flip side of things, I will not be getting to Romero as often. Give me Onama. Not much more to say about this one. It should be a very entertaining one, but do not know how much Romero is able to offer to Onama that Onama hasn't seen so far in the UFC. Then we got the 37-18 Jim Miller versus the 23-1 Damon Jackson. The Leech coming back up here, coming back up to 155, and what is a pretty fun fight, I think. We know Jim Miller, we love him. We're happy to see him back here. He has taken a beating in that last one, but a guy who has been in the UFC forever, literally the most wins in UFC history. Very fun to watch, very aggressive style, a ton of finishes as well. And he's facing a guy, Damon Jackson, who has also been around for a while. A guy who was able to go out there and put on some fun fights as well. But they bring kind of different styles, right? You have Jim Miller, a guy who is extremely explosive in a round one, who is able to go out there with a powerful shot, who is able to go out there and submit you off his back as well. Versus a guy, Damon Jackson, who kind of wants to more so utilize cardio and pressure and resiliency to beat you down the stretch, right? Very good takedowns, very solid top control, a fine jiu-jitsu player as well. And a guy who has struggled on the feet, but who has shown decent volume and who has, for some reason, wanted to strike recently. A guy who maybe hasn't had the best run as of late, but has fought some pretty good level of competition. I think what this comes down to is just the styles they're going to bring. I think this fight's going to be a really, really close one. I completely get picking Jim Miller, and I really want to, if I'm being honest. And I do think Jim Miller maybe has more finishing upside on the feet. I just think the style they're going to bring, Damon Jackson is a guy who wants to go out there and shoot takedowns historically, can go out there, land them, be on top position, be pretty strong at that. And Jim Miller, although is a phenomenal scrambler, phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioner off his back, the more the fight goes, the more he's able to accept bottom position. And I think that's just going to allow for Damon Jackson to accumulate top time, accumulate minutes won. And although I think the striking could be close, I think I'm going to pick Damon Jackson here. I think the path for Jim Miller is damage, potentially a finish, and maybe some striking volume. But aside from that, the height goes to Damon Jackson. I do think he's able to land volume just as much as Jim Miller. And I do think he's able to land in takedowns from top position to win that spot. So it's either Jim Miller by knockout for me or Damon Jackson by decision. I ended up siding with Jackson, but I definitely could be convinced other way. A very close one. On DraftKings, Damon Jackson, 8.6. He has some upside. I think it could be a very, very fine pivot play. Landing takedowns, landing top control time, but definitely not a must play like some other people better in this range. Miller, like I said, has finish upside and someone who I do think can land that knockout shot. We've seen Jackson knocked out before, so someone I will be sprinkling into tournaments, but still I prefer Moura, I prefer Hafez. So definitely not forcing him into every lineup, but I will have both these fighters kind of around at the field because I do not want to be burned by either of them. Then we have the 16-7 Chris Weidman versus the 16-8 Eric Anders. And another tough one. We have Jim Miller before this, a vet that we want to see succeed, and kind of same thing here with Chris Weidman. Former champion, the All-American, has definitely had his ups and downs inside the cage. He's won his last one, but still a guy who is definitely on the tail end of his career. He is a bit more fragile with his leg kicks. He's a bit more slower with his takedown entries, but still a guy who's very durable, who will work well in the clinch, and a guy who is just still definitely someone you can't count out. He's someone, Eric Anders, who definitely hasn't had the same peak as someone like Weidman, just has won the belt, but a guy who is more so built on that physicality, built on that power, former football player, if I'm not mistaken, and a guy who wants to go out there and utilize that aggression and physicality to take care of you. Let's put it that way. A lot of clinch work with Eric Anders, utilizing that physicality, is able to mix in takedowns, throws with fight-ending intention on the feet, but is also a bit slower of a striker, does not have the same jiu-jitsu game on the mat, and is someone who definitely, if this fight was like 4 years ago, you would take Chris Weidman in a heartbeat. However, at this point in his career, there's definitely a case to be made for either side. And what I'll come out and saying this is, I definitely think Weidman can have success. I definitely think he can hold his own in the clinch. I definitely think he can maybe even land takedowns of his own. But at this point in time, I did end up signing with Eric Anders. Maybe not to the price tag it is. I think the line could be wide, but I favor Anders' ability to mix the physicality. I think he has more finish upside. I think he will go forward, and I do think he's someone who's just at a better spot physically in his career. I know Weidman's coming off a win, but we won't talk about that Silva eye poke fight. I just think Anders maybe being a bit counted out here, which is ironic because he's the favorite. But I've seen a lot of love for Weidman, and although I get it, although he's definitely someone who, you don't want to be laying chalk on Eric Anders, I do have to favor his physicality. I do have to favor his ability to go out there and land the more damaging shots on the feet and potentially win moments that way. So, extremely close fight. I think at this price tag, you maybe pick Weidman, but gun to my head, I would pick someone like Eric Anders here, another very close one. DraftKings-wise, I think Anders is my favorite mid-range contrarian play. I don't think he's going to have too much ownership. Not too many people play him all too often all the time. But I do think he has some finishing upside here. Chris Weidman is getting to a more fragile point of his career. I do think Andrews can land some big shots in physicality, and that's the really way I'm playing him, is a pivot contrarian play to get different at probably lower ownership. Whereas Weidman, I guess you could have some ownership at 7.7K, but similar to Miller, like I like Miller more and Hafez all more in his bottom range, so I'm not getting into Weidman too much either. Another fight that, two vets, I hope it's a good fight, but definitely not a fight I want to get too involved in. They have the 19-5 Jonathan Martinez versus the 9-1 Marcus McGhee. Marcus McGhee has definitely been on a solid run recently. A guy who's gained a lot of hype. A guy who is definitely not a young buck by any means, but a guy who has looked very, very good as a prospect. Able to go out there, land finishes, very dominant performance, mixing the striking as well. Very aggressive and a very fun style that mixes in well. And something you like to cheer for. I mean, 3 victories, all of them coming inside the distance. I mean, it's definitely a style of fighter you want to go out there and back. He's facing perennial contender Jonathan Martinez, a guy who I've definitely not had the most success betting against, but I'm happy to have cashed that Aldo ticket last time there, which maybe was a weird performance for Martinez. I mean, before that, he was on a 6-fight winning streak, a guy who has been in the top for a while because he is very, very skilled. He's very smart, very tactical with everything, and although he maybe got a couple decisions gifted to him, aside your Magomedov fight, is still a fighter who has shown a ton of success out of the cage. Phenomenal leg kicks, great methods behind the madness, let's put it that way. And he's able to stick to his plan, right? He's got phenomenal counter striker. He's able to win minutes, able to win optics, and he doesn't have that same electric fun style as Marcus McGhee, but very technically sound, very good counter striker, and a fighter who can definitely win minutes on the feet. I see a lot of love for McGhee, and I get it. He's a fun fighter to watch, and I do think he could have ground success. I do think he can blitz in against Martinez. Martinez has been knocked out before, but although I've picked against Martinez so many times, I'm going to pick him here. I'm going to take Jonathan Martinez, and again, take it with a grain of salt. I haven't been the best pick in his fights, but Marcus McGhee's wins are coming over a pretty low level of competition that I don't rate too highly or able to compare against Jonathan Martinez. Bolaños, Baez, and Newsom, 3 fighters who definitely are not on the same level as Martinez. And you add in the fact that Martinez, I think, would favor him as a better minute winner on the feet, better volume striker, is going to throw in resistance, and he's going to throw in those leg kicks that, truthfully, if you do not plan for them, those leg kicks can definitely break you down the stretch. And I hope McGhee is definitely prepared for them. And I do think McGhee can necessarily go out there and have some takedown success. I mean, I've faded Martinez because I do think he can be taken down and controlled down there, but Martinez looks strong in the clinch. He's able to reverse people. He works back up to his feet, has solid takedown defense. It's just, aside from that blitz knockout and him closing the distance quickly, I favor Martinez at range, and I favor his leg kicks to win optics. And I think he's got the takedown defense and the clinch work to win this fight. So I'm going to take the dog shot here on Jonathan Martinez. I'm surprised he aligned this way. I just have to see more from McGhee. He's got to prove it to me before being this price tag. So give me Jonathan Martinez. DraftKings-wise, solid play at a 7.8. I don't know. I think if the leg kicks materialize to a finish, maybe. But he's always been content to go out there, score 59 decision win, 67 in decision win, 59 in a decision win. Like, he's not necessarily the best scorer, not much grappling upside, if any, and is more so reliant on volume, which doesn't always get. So I'd rather play other people, although I am picking him as an underdog. McGhee does have some GPP upside due to his finish-only style, although I do expect him to be popular, and if I'm saying he's not going to win this fight, maybe I'll be definitely under the field and want to go elsewhere if he's going to be popular, and if I don't think he's going to win this fight. So we'll sprinkle in some McGhee because of his GVP upside, but I'm picking Jonathan Martinez, and I do think his leg kicks are going to be a lot here. On to the main card, we have the 10-1 Marcio Ruffy versus the 14-4 James Llontop. Minus 900 favorite here. Huge favorite here, Marcio Ruffy, and he looked phenomenal last time. He looked amazing. One of the best debuts we have ever seen from a prospect, and only putting more emphasis on how good that Fighting Nerds camp is. The guy had an insane scissor sweep takedown, amazing counters on the feet, and the guy looked really, really good. But I still think there's a lot more to learn from him. I think that his line may be wide, considering he's facing a striker in Llontop who's going to out-volume him and win like optics with the volume. The line could be wide there, but I'd be lying if I said I'm picking Llontop here. I'm on Ruffy. I think he's set up for success here after such a phenomenal debut. He's got the ability not only to counter-strike like I was going to say never seen before, like we've only seen from the top fighters before, and I do think he has very precise shots that he selects well, and when he chooses to shoot them, like they come off with power. Coming down to 155, he's got a lot of size behind it as well. These things are going well for Ruffy. I think he's able to go out there, land big shots, land the powerful shots, and probably knock out a guy like Llontop. And if he has to, I think he's got the better ground game. Shall I go there as well? So give me Ruffy, no hot take there. A big favorite. I think he's a phenomenal counter striker, and Llontop going forward is only going to give Ruffy more opportunities to counter strike. So hoping for another performance. However, what I will say, although I'm picking Ruffy and although I think he wins, I'll be a bit under the field to him this week on DraftKings. I mean, 9.6K, scored 110 last time, but he's not necessarily the highest volume guy. He's a guy who builds on more off counter-striking, a guy who, yes, obliterated Malarkey last time, but if this fight goes to round 2, he doesn't have the volume or the pace necessarily to go out there and, always score well. And at 9.6K, priced above John Jones and above all these other fighters, I think he's fine to sprinkle in there, but it's a real risk. I mean, he's not always going to go out there and score 110 points. If this fight goes to second round, he could go out there and score 80, 90 in a dominant win, just not with the volume to score well. So I'm on Ruffy. I will be playing some of him, but probably not in single entry, and definitely be a little bit under the field. Because although I do think he wins, style doesn't always translate well to DraftKings. So maybe a little bit under the field. Not getting the Llontop. Like I said, I think Ruffy wins. Although I'm saying the price is wide, I still think Ruffy wins. So Kenny Marcio should be a fun fight, and I'm excited to see how this guy's able to do in the UFC. Then we have the 18-4 Korean Silva versus the 12-6 Viviane Araujo. Araujo is someone who has been at the top for a while. Again, a fighter who's getting up there, 38 years old, but a fighter who is very physically imposing, a lot of power banner shots as well, and someone who has shown the ability to compete at the top of the division. I mean, it feels like she's been an underdog in a lot of these last spots here, but someone who was on a really solid run to start her career with a lot of knockout power, and that's kind of what she is. She utilized that physicality very well, overhand shots, has worked on that cardio to throw more volume down the stretch, but someone who really wants to win off of moments. Not the best minute winner, someone who relies more on landing the big shots and can either take you down or take you out, and rock you, or maybe people succumb to more volume pressure fighters down the stretch. And what she's facing here is someone who is one of the most hyped up people in the division here in Karina Silva. She is a absolute grinder who has gone out there, shown insane physicality in her own right, with an ability to compete in the feet as well, but someone who really just wants to take you down and dominate you down there. Came into the scene, 3 round 1 submission wins, and it looks like a specialist down there who truly does look like a phenomenal wrestler and grappler with a ton of physicality. So what it's going to come down to is a physical striker in Araujo versus a physical, younger, quicker grappler in Silva. And although I think the price tag's maybe getting a little bit out of hand, because I do think Araujo was probably going to win the striking exchanges, I gotta pick Silva here. She's able to get to the hip, she's able to take people down, and she's so quick, so powerful, and so strong. And she's able to keep people there and win moments and transfer through positions. And when she gets a hold of your neck, I mean, she can definitely really squeeze you out too. She's got a phenomenal squeeze down there. So give me Silva. Although I think her cardio could be tested, I think there are flaws in Silva's game. I don't think she's perfect. I think she's got a good matchup here against someone in Araujo who is not going to land a bunch of volume on her, is someone who can be stuck in bottom position, is not going to threaten much stuff from bottom. I think Silva's going to have more physicality in the clinch, is going to be the stronger grappler of the two, and is going to get to the hips quickly and take her down. So I'm on Karina Silva. I think the line is interesting, but I do pick her to win. And then at that, a 9.2K is a very solid option in my eyes. She has scored 122, 104, has a wrestling-based approach. And on a card like this, when you're in between John Jones and Charles Oliveira, when you have Ruffy and Nickal above, I do think she goes overlooked. And because of that, I love me some Karina Silva this week. So grappling path to victory, although the line might be wide, I think it translates really well to DraftKings. And someone who I do think is going to utilize takedowns to win this fight here. So give me some Karina Silva 9.2K. Araujo, not getting too often. I mentioned a ton of underdogs I like, so I'm not going to need to force her. So give me Silva to win this fight. Should be a good one. Then we have the 6-0 Bo Nickal versus the 17-8-1 Paul Craig. Bo Nickal, undefeated prospect, biggest favorite of all time, and another very big favorite here this time too. As it starts to rain outside, we get the reign of Bo Nickal coming to fruition here. And let me just say, I'm picking Bo Nickal. I think he's got the better striking in this one. The better wrestling, of course, is Bo Nickal, but a guy who's just really set up for success here, facing a guy in Paul Craig, who's maybe a bit more fragile. However, I do not think it'll be an easy path to victory. Paul Craig, although easy to be hit in the feet, is not an easy task to out-scramble. The guy is a phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioner, has submitted Ed Goliath, has submitted Jamal Hill, has submitted everybody, and someone who will definitely test Bo Nickal here. However, that being said, Paul Craig is too fragile on the feet. I think Bo Nickal can have success out there. I think Bo Nickal can land the more powerful shots. And although Paul Craig can throw up triangles from his back all the time, Bo Nickal's going to be the better wrestler. He's going to have ground and pound as well, and he can stay safe. He has been grappling a lot of tournaments. He's a very smart grappler, and he's just so physically imposing down there. I do think he's able to have success. No hot take. I'm taking the big favorite here in Bo Nickal. You should get it done. 9.8K, that's the interesting one, because sometimes, you don't always want to go again to the ground with Paul Craig. And if you think you have a striking advantage, that could maybe leave you on the feet and allow you to go out there and potentially score really good on DraftKings with an early knockout, or really poorly. So I'm not going to be smashing him into every lineup, but I do like him more than Ruffy. I've outlined a lot of underdogs I liked as well, so I'm able to get to someone like Bo Nickal at 9.8K. And in doing so, he scored 109, 130, and 100. Again, not the easiest matchup in Paul Craig on the ground, but a guy in Bo Nickal who has takedown upside, who is facing a guy in Paul Craig who can be knocked out, who is there to be hit, and who has been knocked out in a lot of these losses. I think Nickal has power on the feet. I think he has wrestling shot to go there. And although I'm worried of him being tentative, I'll be playing him if I can afford him at 9.8K. Should be an interesting one. I am picking him to win. No surprise there. Give me some Nickal. Co-main event time, 24-10, Charles Oliveira, 23-8, Michael Chandler. The rematch here. I picked Chandler last time. He lost. And for a different reason this time, I am going to be picking Charles Oliveira. I'll put it out there early. I have picked against Charles Oliveira. I think he's someone who is extremely finish reliant, which is an incredible style to have. It's super fun. But a guy who can be outstruck a lot of times, leaves himself to be hit, to be hurt. But he seems to have this different fire about him this time too. He keeps on wanting to improve. He wants that belt back. And we all know him as this phenomenal finisher. On the ground, one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners we've seen and a lot, maybe ever down there. He is a wizard. He is very strong, very good squeeze, very good back takes as well. And on the feet, he has shown a ton of power. I mean, he's okay to be hit rocked because, come on, come play in my guard. That's kind of what he's saying. So he has shown a lot of power. He's shown a lot of desire, a lot of hunger. If you want to beat Charles Oliveira, you probably got to get him out of there early, right? Charles Oliveira, the longer he's in there, the more he's able to rally, the more he's able to make you make a mistake and take his back, and the more you're able to succumb to what Charles Oliveira has to offer, right? So Michael Chandler's a guy who I love. He has a really fun style in there. He makes for really entertaining fights, but he is someone who can make mistakes inside the cage. He is someone who can be hurt. He is someone who can have his back taken, the same as Charles Oliveira did, but he's a phenomenal wrestler in his own right. He's a phenomenal striker, and I do not want to discount anything that Michael Chandler is, but I think Oliveira's got hunger behind him this time, and although Oliveira can be rocked as well, so can Chandler. Chandler can be rocked. He can make mistakes in there to try to entertain the fans. And I think Oliveira's just got some hunger in him that makes him win this fight here. I think he will go forward. I think he at one point either take the back of Chandler or land the big shots. I mean, he walked down Dariush and just labeled him, plastered him with it. And I do think, although it's going to make for a very fun one, I do think Chandler at one point is going to make a mistake in there. He's got 5 rounds, and I do not think Chandler can be perfect for 5 rounds to survive that. So in a very close one, I don't think it's, again, no super GOAT Maxwell lock play. I am going to pick Charles Oliveira to win. 9K on DraftKings. I think he's a very solid play as well. He has scored very well. Scored 109 last time against Chandler, but 113 against Gaethje, 113 against Dariush. A ton of finish upside, a ton of ground success as well. However, I do think the fight may be close in the line and tail, so some 7.2K Michael Chandler will definitely be sprinkled in. He had a ton of early success against Oliveira. I do think you can hurt Oliveira, and if you want to beat him, try that early finish. So if Chandler is really hungry for that Conor McGregor fight, I do think a finish is live here too. So I'll have both sides. I did pick Oliveira, but I do think the fight is close. I think it's going to be a phenomenal one. So give me Charles Oliveira, both sides on DraftKings. End of the main event. We have the 27-1 Jon Jones, 20-4 Stipe Miocic. Like I said at the start of the video, I would rather see Tom Aspinall in here, the interim champion, but we do get what we want. If you give me this fight 5-6 years ago, it's the craziest thing ever. The light heavyweight, maybe the heavyweight GOAT is Miocic versus one of the GOATs. That's my GOAT right there. But still, I think this is very interesting to go out here and see. Jon Jones, there's no doubt he is a phenomenal fighter. He is smart. He can wrestle down there, good jiu-jitsu, phenomenal striking and range down there. Regardless of what you think Reyes did against him or anything else, the guy is a phenomenal fighter, one of the greatest to ever do it, and a fighter who is extremely dangerous. Coming up to heavyweight, he had a very short exposure time. We didn't really see too much of him, but he weighed in pretty good, and he just decimated his real gain here. And now he's facing this 42-year-old Stipe Miocic, someone who has been rocked to finish the last one, someone who we have not seen in a very long time, but someone who at his peak was a phenomenal wrestler as well, a phenomenal striker, ability to mix in the arts, blend them together, but a guy who didn't really do much better than Jon Jones. And it's so hard to go out here and pick Stipe because he's getting up there in age, so he'll be slower to it. He's been knocked out, and even at his peak, what did he go out there and do better than Jon? Did he wrestle better than Jon Jones? Did he do jiu-jitsu better than Jon Jones? Maybe he hit harder with more power, but I would still favor the technicality on the feet of Jon Jones. I don't know. All this to say is I'm picking Jon Jones to win as a large favorite. I think I'd rather see the Tom Aspinall fight given a new fresh air inside of it, but at this point in time, with the age of Stipe Miocic, the way he's coming off that injury, the way that I just see Jon Jones having recovered a lot of these aspects, I'm picking Jon Jones to win. We have yet to see him finish. We have yet to see him lose. So is Stipe Miocic the type of guy to do that at his point in time? I don't think so. Give me Jon Jones. He should get it done. I think he can land the big shots on the feet. We'll stock him down and look to cement himself as the GOAT, one of the GOATs. I'm not going to call him the GOAT. But definitely has an opportunity to do that here. He's ducking Aspinall, but I do think he is able to go out there and put on a big statement against a name who was once the best in the world. So give me Jon Jones. Should be an interesting one. I hope Stipe Miocic can put up some resistance. I hope he puts up a good fight, but I am picking Jon Jones. DraftKings wise, we'll have a ton of him, 9.5K. Again, some pretty horrible performances against Reyes and Santos and Gustafsson on DraftKings, but 141 against Smith, 114 against Glover, 104 against Gall. 5 rounds to work. He's got an older opponent in front of him, someone who he can land takedowns on, someone who can land a ton of volume on, someone who is there to be hit. So give me Jon Jones. I think he gets a finish. I think he scores pretty well at a 9.5K. I'll be happy to play him, especially with those underdogs I've outlined before. Stipe, again, I haven't seen anyone beat Jon Jones, so I'm not going to pick anyone to do so. Because of that, I'll be sticking more towards Jones at 9.5K to round up my lineups. But that's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm quickly running through my quick picks, taking Jon Jones, Charles Oliveira, Bo Nickal, Karine Silva, Marcio Ruffy, Jonathan Martinez, Eric Anders, Damon Jackson, David Onama, Marcin Tybura, Mickey Gall, Basil Hafez, and Eduardo Moura. DraftKings-wise, Nickal and Jones up top, I love. I think Silva's a phenomenal contrarian play with that wrestling upside. And of course, how can you not like Charles Oliveira? In that mid-range, again, I'm not picking a lot of these fighters in the mid-range, but I think you can have some Damon Jackson to get a bit different. Same with Eric Anders. Those are 2 phenomenal contrarian plays in the mid-range. I love Tybura. And then underdog-wise, Miller, Moura, Hafez are 3 of my favorite underdogs in the entire slate. I'm going to anchor my lineups around them a lot. GPP-wise, you could also play some Chandler and Brahimaj if you want to go for those high ceilings as well. But Moura, Hafez, Jones, Nickal, Tybura, some sort of those builds are definitely going to be the way I'm going this week. Should be a phenomenal card. Oh, and Onama as well if you can afford him, depending on salary. Betting wise, nothing locked in so far, but I'll probably sprinkle some money on Moura and Hafez, especially down there. Probably some violence in some other matchups as well. I think it should be a really fun card. Again, I hope we see some Aspinall there eventually, but that's going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, check me out on Twitter at GamblesGordo, or check me out on Establish the Run, where I do a podcast there, or on CoolBet. A lot of places to find me, right? Check me out on Twitter for my full card of bets, probably Friday or Saturday at the latest. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I wish you all the best of luck in all your DraftKings and betting endeavors, guys, and let's make some money.